We're heading to Bakersfield, California, a city with a population of 400,000. Jaime Osuna was born on March 7, 1988 in Bakersfield, California. However, his childhood would be far from loving and nurturing. He grew up in a harsh environment, in a neighborhood dominated by crime and poverty. His mother, Michelle, was just 19 when she became pregnant with Jaime. His biological father was 21. The relationship between the young couple was troubled from the start. Throughout her pregnancy, Michelle had to endure many difficulties, and the greatest danger lay with Jaime's biological father, who was abusive and controlling. Jaime's unnamed biological father did not cease his mistreatment of Michelle, even while she was pregnant. During an argument, he kicked Michelle in the stomach, leaving Jaime with permanent physical damage before he was even born. It's worth pausing to reflect. Violence against a pregnant woman endangers not only the mother, but also the unborn child. About a year after Jaime's birth, the couple decided to part ways, and Michelle met a man named Jeff. Unsurprisingly, Jaime's biological father did not take kindly to this new relationship. He held a knife to Jeff's throat, leading to his arrest by the police. Fortunately, after this, he stopped causing trouble for the family and never confronted them again. Michelle married Jeff and took Jaime and his stepbrother with her. However, the family's financial situation was far from stable. Michelle's relatives realized that Jeff wanted Michelle but not her children, refusing to act as a stepfather. Sadly, Michelle had managed to escape one abuser only to fall into the arms of another. An alarming incident occurred one day when Michelle and Jeff took little Jaime along on a fishing trip. On the way home, Jaime began crying and screaming in the back seat. Annoyed by the noise, Jeff turned around, leaned over, and demanded that Jaime stop crying. At some point, Jeff pushed the young boy out of the moving car. Surprisingly, Jaime survived this bizarre incident without injury. Even more astonishing, Michelle did not take her son to the hospital afterward. It was later discovered that Jaime had suffered brain damage due to this event. Jeff, meanwhile, continued his abuse of Jaime and his stepbrother. First, Jaime's stepbrother left home and moved in with their grandparents, where he soon began to lead a normal life. But Jaime stayed with Jeff and Michelle because his grandfather despised him. Michelle and Jeff eventually decided to have children together, and over the years, they had 2 more kids. Jeff was loving toward his own children, showing them affection and care. However, this only seemed to intensify the hatred he felt toward Jaime. At family meals, everyone but Jaime would sit at the table to eat, while Jaime, starving, had to wait for everyone else to finish. After the meal, Jeff would place Jaime's food on the floor and make him eat like a dog. Once, Jeff tied Jaime to a tree and whipped him with a belt. Fortunately, this time, Michelle intervened. She called 911 and reported what Jeff had done. When the police arrived, they saw the marks on Jaime's body and took Jeff into custody. However, during the police interrogation, Jeff claimed he was only joking and had hit Jaime just once, not repeatedly. Despite being charged with child abuse, he was soon released and returned home. This summarized Jaime's situation. Even his mother was not on his side, and no one fought for him. Jaime asked his mother why she chose Jeff over him. Michelle could never answer these questions. In an interview, she admitted to being a weak person and confessed that she had failed to protect Jaime. Finally, when Jaime turned 12, he moved in with his grandparents, escaping the abusive household. Though his rescue came late, Jaime seemed emotionally disconnected from the world, and this affected his behavior. At just 15, he was imprisoned for stabbing another child and spent 4 years in juvenile detention. At 19, he regained his freedom and got involved in some gang activities in his youth. That same year, he attended a house party that would become significant for him. There, he met a woman who would play an important role in his life. For the sake of this story, we'll call her Mary. Mary, 37, was a single mother of 3 and was hosting a birthday party for her 16-year-old son. Trying to be the cool mom, she supplied alcohol to the teenagers and became quite drunk herself. At one point during the party, Mary began dancing with a young man. Her nephew, noticing this, was not pleased with his aunt dancing with this guy. To scare him off, he started looking around for someone and noticed Jaime. He asked Jaime to intimidate the young man. Jaime went to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and approached the young man dancing with Mary. He told him to stay away or he would stab him. When the young man responded defiantly, Jaime lost his temper and stabbed him, abruptly changing the mood of the party. Fortunately, the stab wound was not serious, but it was enough to warrant a call to the police. Troubled Jaime had violated his parole and was arrested for assault with a deadly weapon. Jaime and Mary hadn't known each other before the party, but they continued to stay in touch after Jaime was imprisoned. Jaime wrote letters to Mary from jail, and she responded. An unlikely relationship blossomed between them behind bars. When Jaime was released in November 2009, Mary went to pick him up from prison. She was shocked to see his face covered in tattoos. The two spent the night together, and during this one-night reunion, Mary became pregnant. Jaime and Mary were now taking their relationship to another level. Jaime told Mary that he wanted to marry her and be a good father to her child. Mary decided to give him a chance. However, shortly after their marriage, their relationship began to deteriorate. Jaime, showing signs of his troubled past, started to physically abuse his wife. One evening during a heated argument, Jaime did something strange. In a fit of rage, he grabbed Mary's mother's ashes and ran out of the house with them. This deeply hurt Mary, who immediately called the police. When the police intervened, Jaime was arrested for domestic violence and sent back to jail. Sadly, Mary's mother's ashes were never found. Shortly after these events, Mary gave birth. Jaime, however, failed to live up to his promises and proved to be a poor father. After spending about 6 months in jail, he was released on parole. Mary, not wanting to raise her child alone, decided to give Jaime another chance. As expected, this did not work out, and things only got worse. Not content with what he had already done to Mary, Jaime turned his attention to someone else, Mary's 7-year-old son. Just as his own father had done to him, Jaime began abusing Mary's son. This was the final straw for Mary. She grabbed a knife and shouted, "You can't touch my children!" After this confrontation, Jaime left the house but soon returned to harass Mary again. She called the police, and Jaime was arrested once more for violating his parole and sent back to the place that had become his home, prison. Just 7 months later, Jaime was released again, and 8 days after his release, he called Mary. This time, however, the phone call was different. Jaime wasn't threatening or behaving menacingly. He simply said, "I just killed a woman near the Morocco motel." Mary was shocked, knowing just how dangerous Jaime was. She immediately called 911 and reported his confession. In a tragic twist, the police didn't take her call seriously and didn't even dispatch officers to the scene. 5 days after this phone call, an employee at the Morocco motel made a horrifying discovery: the body of 36-year-old Yvette Pina. When the police arrived, they knew this would be a straightforward murder investigation because they already had a prime suspect, Jaime Osuna. The police launched a manhunt for Jaime, but as usual, he was not immediately caught. After 5 days of searching, they arrested him at his grandmother's house. Yvette Pina's autopsy revealed that she had died from blunt force trauma, stab wounds, and strangulation. Details of the case were not fully disclosed to the public because the crime scene was so horrific. It was determined that Jaime had tortured Yvette and inflicted sadistic pain before killing her. While being questioned, Jaime refused to cooperate with the detectives and denied ever making the confession to Mary. Yvette Pina was a complete stranger to Jaime, so the motive for the murder remained unclear. Many detectives on the case noted that Yvette resembled Mary, and they speculated that he had killed her because of this resemblance. While awaiting trial for murder, Jaime continued to get more tattoos and harass Mary from behind bars. He even threatened that he would do everything in his power to take her children away from her. He wrote numerous letters to Child Protective Services, spreading false stories about Mary. While Jaime pursued his devious plans, Mary was arrested for mistreating her children, but this arrest was unrelated to Jaime's allegations. Mary had been taken into custody for hitting one of her children. Upon learning this, Jaime tried to use the situation to his advantage, even going so far as to plan Mary's murder with another inmate. Yvette Pena's family endured immense grief as they awaited the outcome of the murder case, which was repeatedly delayed. They had to face Jaime each time in court for 5 years. During these hearings, Jaime mocked them with a smug smile, waved at them, and never showed any remorse for his crimes. For 5 years, Jaime denied all charges. But just 3 days before the trial was set to begin, he reached out to a journalist and asked for an interview. During this interview, Jaime confessed, "I'm guilty. I'm a sadist. I did it. And I will do it again and again."
Sadistically, premeditatedly, deliberately tortured and murdered. I'm sadistic. I really don't care. I'll do it and I'll do it again over and over and over.
After denying all the allegations for 5 years, he finally admitted his guilt just 3 days before the trial. The journalist asked Jaime about his childhood. He spoke about the abuse he endured and his troubled past, making some confessions years later. He said he started self-harming at the age of 12 because he felt emotionally disconnected. He described committing murder as an addiction and stated, "I'd rather do this than use drugs. I'd rather do this than be with the most beautiful woman in the world or have sex with her." Jaime's confessions didn't end there. He admitted to 2 more murders in the past, stating that Yvette was not his first victim. He claimed he had committed his first murder at the age of 13 and didn't know his other 2 victims. He was in his 30s when he committed those murders. Following these confessions, the prosecution offered Jaime a plea deal. Under the deal, if he admitted his guilt, he would avoid the death penalty. Jaime accepted the offer without hesitation. Jaime Osuna was found guilty of the murder of Yvette Pena and was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. But the story didn't end there. What happened after Jaime went to prison was, unfortunately, mind-boggling. Given his obvious danger, he was placed in a solitary cell. However, Jaime began looking for ways to escape his cell. He was caught with weapons multiple times in prison and threatened other inmates. One day he snuck into another inmate's cell, stabbed him multiple times, and slashed his face. In March 2019, Jaime Osuna was given a cellmate for the first time, a decision that sparked controversy. This cellmate was Luis Romero, a 44-year-old inmate serving a 27-year sentence for second-degree murder. Luis, who had been behind bars since he was 17, was likely living out his final days in prison as he was soon to be released. The prison they were in, Corcoran State Prison, was known as one of the most dangerous prisons in California. Famous inmates like Charles Manson had been housed there. Just 24 hours after being placed in the same cell with Jaime, Luis Romero was found dead in his cell on March 9, 2019, covered in blood. Jaime, who had fashioned a knife from a razor, first cut off Luis's fingers and then removed one of his ribs. The atrocities didn't stop there. He decapitated Luis, gouged out his eyes, and then made a necklace out of his body parts. This necklace was found around Jaime's neck in his cell. There was also a message written in blood on the wall: "I am the man with 1,000 faces." The discovery of this gruesome scene exposed negligence by the prison staff, as all cells were supposed to be checked every 30 minutes. A subsequent report revealed that a guard had claimed to have done his rounds that night and reported that Luis Romero was still alive. The reason for this mistake was hidden in Jaime's plan. A sheet obscured the view in the cell, and the guards failed to notice, allowing the murder to go undetected. Jaime faced new charges for the brutal murder of Luis Romero, but his case is still unresolved. A court ruled that Jaime was mentally unfit to stand trial, so the case was postponed. There is speculation that Jaime is a Satanist. He has a pentagram tattoo on his forehead and frequently proclaimed his allegiance to Satanism whenever he had the chance. Before we conclude this video, please be aware that the video on the left may be disturbing. It is recommended for adult viewing only. On the right, you'll find a playlist of videos that have been highly appreciated by our viewers.